not remotely. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm sure Peter Wanless did a wonderful job to the best of his ability, given the fact he probably had little resources, little time, little money.
He had a QC working with him.
Fine. But nonetheless, I was very disappointed to hear David Cameron come out today to say, there's no cover-up. Well, that wasn't exactly what Peter Wanless said. They can't prove it either way. So does David Cameron have selective hearing, I wonder? You cannot be proved either way. I do really feel for the people that have been caught up in this mess. It's nothing but a dog's dinner. The CSA is an inquiry, the dog's dinner. The whole thing is, how do these people who feel abused, and there's plenty of them out there in this country, when this sort of thing happens, they know, oh, there was no cover. Are they saying they lied? How does David Mellor know?
Keith Ayres.
It must be very difficult for those who've survived the abuse to have to live this again and again, day after day, with so many inquiries and so many debates and so many people talking about it. Peter Wanless and Richard Whittam did not actually say for certain that there was no cover-up. They said that they couldn't come to a conclusion, and I put to them that the jury was still out, and they agreed, because of the shambolic nature of the record-keeping at the Home Office. And Marilyn is absolutely right. They didn't have enough time to go through the massive number of files that they had to look at. They didn't necessarily have even the equipment, simply because in the old days they didn't have electronic file keeping.
No, but as I
understand
it, they do say that they have produced no evidence of any wrongdoing by Leon Britton or by other civil servants, and they have found a trail that this dossier of evidence from Geoffrey Dickens was looked at, was passed on, and that it was routine thereafter to destroy files after a period of time. So in that sense, they're saying the procedure was followed.
Well, the shambolic procedure that existed, but their recommendations are very clear. In future, where you have children involved in allegations of this kind, they have to be fast-tracked. They could not be absolutely confident that everything that they were shown would get to the bottom of this matter, and therefore we have to accept what they say. This is going to carry on until we have a proper, thorough investigation, which we hope the child abuse inquiry set up by the Home Secretary will achieve.
I mean, Julie Langdon, you and I both work in Westminster in that period, and there were all sorts of allegations flying around.
There certainly were. There were rumours all the time, and we both know that we heard them, and you didn't know what to believe. I mean, it's very hard now to look back and think what was going on here. But
and that's the problem, in a sense, that I think it's fairly established that the late Cyril Smith now had a lot to answer for. So it's understandable people like Marilyn think, well.
I offer you the late Alistair McAlpine, who was a friend of mine, who I knew was not guilty of child abuse, but nevertheless, there was a horrible period of time about a year ago when people were going around saying, "What about your friend Alistair? What's been going on here?" And it is very, very unpleasant. The aura of not being able to clear the air. And I thought the really interesting thing today was Theresa May saying, I'm not going to stand here and say that nothing untoward was done. I haven't got the phrase right exactly what she said, but there was something...
Well, she said she's not going to say there wasn't a cover-up.
Well, that's because she doesn't know. That's the problem.
Exactly.
But
what's the point of these inquiries if you can't get to the bottom of it?
Thank you. What is the point? Let me tell you, my family have been through this. I can't change the past. I can't rewrite my history. But I've put my energies into enough abuse to help going forward. And I feel so frustrated. I see Keith night after night on television and go, well done, well done. Come on, change things. You don't know anybody. You say you don't know Alistair. You don't know anyone. You don't know anyone.
The problem is this. As you say, you have been through this in your family, but we're talking about more recent history, as I understand it, since the year 2000.
Yeah.
The issue is, going back to 1980, another 20 years, whether it's possible to get to the bottom of it.
It is possible, and I think that the whole thing has been so badly handled.
Absolutely.
And we're already talking about the fact that who will take this job on as the third head of this inquiry.
Well, that was the second inquiry. This was the first inquiry, which was supposed to clear up a specific point.
But the whole lot,
we're all agreeing it hasn't.
It's so badly handled, and frankly, Theresa May has not had a good weak. She's not had a good set of policies. I admire her work. I think she's been a pretty good Home Secretary. But over this child abuse process, this has gone horrendously wrong.
Yes.
And I'm afraid she may well be making the same mistake again, because we heard compelling evidence from the survivors' representatives that they wanted a fresh look at the terms of reference, they wanted a fresh look at the panel, and they wanted to be consulted.
You're talking about the Wolf Butler-Schloss inquiry.
So, given all this, well, the ex-Butler-Schloss inquiry, given all this, I think a pause is required where the victims and survivors are properly consulted, as they were in Australia, before you get to the next stage. Otherwise, people like Marilyn will never get closure. And unless you consult them, and unless you do this, there will be a big problem.
Thank you, because so often it's always the very big charities, the people that have been touched. You've only got to look like other people, like Susie Lamplu's mum, Sarah Payne's mum, that have taken that pain and turned it into something valuable, and yet you're ignored. You're not invited to the CSA inquiry. You know, this crime damages lives for good.
Yes, but you see,
you cannot put it right.
But with all due respect, I just wonder, Julia Langdon, given the massively broad remit which has been given, and this is before, you know, look into the other investigations into Jimmy Savile and the BBC, and whether it's humanly possible to have an inquiry this broad. I mean, you know, it's taken this long to have an inquiry into the Iraq War. At least that was specific, if you like.
And a proper historical inquiry is a very difficult thing to do. One of the things I thought that was fascinating that came out today was that the Home Office had apparently been destroying files after 2 years.
Yes.
Well, I don't throw away my financial affairs in as much as I've sorted them 2 years on, but, you know, I don't throw things away for 2 years on. I think it's very bizarre.
Not just the Home Office, also the police were routinely destroying these files.
However, it was quite interesting that the Home Secretary today seemed to point the finger a bit at the security services and saying, I want to hear from the security services what they'd been up to, and we also had the case of Mr Hale saying he was visited by a special branch, which, as we know, has a connection to this.
Well, I think it's important to hear from everybody, and the fact that she made that statement to the House indicates that there is still a huge amount that we don't know about. That is why, before we start Act 3 of this play, which seems to be in the public domain and seems to have been handled so badly, please let them consult Parliament, the survivors, have a new set of terms of reference, and indeed a new panel. Unless we do this, we're going to be in the same situation in a few weeks' time.
We'll be in the same situation in 10 years' time if we don't try and prevent this crime from happening. And the prevention goes back to proper education, which is what we do, about raising awareness about what these abusers' behaviour is. With respect, you don't know anyone. They don't walk around with a beacon on their head. They are devious, plausible, manipulative, and they cause havoc in people's lives.
How do you think, Keith has given us a suggestion, how do you think that these inquiries or this inquiry can now be improved?
I don't see how they benefit anyone, because I'm now desperately cynical about it. I won't believe anything that comes out now if it's got the government dabs on it, because it's been proved to be flawed, soiled, and an absolute dog's dinner, as I said. You know, could we have some energy, please, to get people like ourselves around the table? Oh, I have sat in meetings where academics have told me how it feels to be the mother of abused children. Don't you tell me how it feels. I know exactly how it feels. Spend a day in my office with those children, those adults who have been victims of abuse. I'll talk you through their life. You are letting, society has let society down badly. I will never lose my passion for it. I want to be on that CSA inquiry.